In the heart of mafia-ridden Sicily on February 21, 1946, a child was born. A child who would grow to become one of the most influential figures in the underworld, Vito Rizzuto. This little one, cradled in the arms of danger and destiny, was born into a family with deep-seated connections to the mafia. A lineage steeped in secrecy, power, and a code of honor that would shape his life in ways unimaginable. Vito's early years in Sicily were a crash course in the craft of the underworld, an education in the art of power. But when Vito was just 8 years old, his family decided to seek a new life away from the turmoil of post-war Italy. They set sail for Canada, trading the narrow cobblestone streets of Sicily for the broad avenues of Montreal. A new home, a new beginning, but, as we'll soon discover, old roots run deep. Little did the world know, this immigrant boy would become the godfather of the Canadian Mafia. Vito Rizzuto wasn't just born into the Mafia, he was bred for it. From an early age, the underworld was his playground, and the Mafia was his family, quite literally. His father, Niccolo Rizzuto, was a stalwart of the Sicilian Mafia, laying down the foundations of what would later become the notorious Rizzuto crime family in Canada. Young Vito was no stranger to this world of shadows, and it wasn't long before he too was drawn into the fold. Barely out of his teenage years, Vito began his ascent through the ranks. His first notable act? The murder of Paolo Violi, the Calabrian boss in Canada. This was a turning point that signaled the rise of the Sicilian faction, with Vito at its helm. His audacity, coupled with an uncanny knack for strategy, made him a force to be reckoned with. The world began to take notice of Vito as he established his own criminal organization, extending its reach far beyond Canada. His charisma and shrewdness allowed him to form alliances with powerful figures in the underworld, from the Hells Angels in Canada to the powerful Bonanno crime family in New York. But it was the infamous triple murder of 3 captains of the Bonanno family that truly marked Vito's arrival on the global mafia stage. It was a brazen act, one that not only eliminated his competition but also sent a clear message. Vito Rizzuto was not a man to be trifled with. Yet, despite his notorious reputation, Vito was a paradox. He was known to be a family man, a charming individual who could easily blend into the crowd. But beneath this facade lay a ruthless mafia boss, a puppet master pulling the strings from the shadows. As Vito solidified his position, he expanded his empire, dipping his fingers into various pies, from drug trafficking to construction. His influence was far-reaching, his power undeniable. Vito was not only ascending the throne of the Canadian Mafia, but he was also making his presence known on the international stage. By the 1980s, Vito Rizzuto had cemented his place as the undisputed godfather of the Canadian Mafia. It was a time of unprecedented power for Rizzuto, a period where his iron grip on Montreal's underbelly was unshakable. His kingdom was built on the lucrative drug trade, with his influence reaching far beyond the snow-capped peaks of Canada, across the Atlantic, to the sun-baked streets of Sicily. As the godfather, Rizzuto's rule was absolute. He was the puppet master, the man behind the scenes, the one who pulled the strings. The narcotics, the racketeering, the extortion, all flowed through him like tributaries feeding into a mighty river. His empire stretched across continents, encompassing a web of criminal enterprises. Yet, despite his illicit activities, there was a certain allure to Rizzuto, a magnetism that drew people in. But Rizzuto was no ordinary mob boss. His reign was marked not by brute force, but by diplomacy. He was a mediator, a negotiator, a man who preferred the boardroom to the back alley. He understood that violence was not always the answer, that sometimes a handshake could be more powerful than a bullet. This diplomatic approach earned him respect, not just from his own men, but from rivals too. He was seen as a peacemaker, a bridge builder in a world often torn apart by feuds and vendettas. Rizzuto's power was immense, his influence far-reaching. He was a kingpin, a titan of the underworld, a man whose name was whispered in hushed tones in darkened corners. He was a figure to be feared, to be respected, to be revered, but above all, he was an empire builder. He took a small-time operation and turned it into an international syndicate, a criminal empire that spanned across oceans. Vito Rizzuto wasn't just a mob boss, he was an empire builder. His reign was a testament to his cunning, his vision, and his unyielding grip on power. He was the godfather, the man who ruled with an iron fist, yet governed with a velvet touch. But even the mightiest of empires can crumble, and Vito Rizzuto's was no exception. The year was 2004, an unforgettable one for the Canadian Mafia boss. The law finally caught up with him, and he was arrested in Montreal. This marked the beginning of a long and tumultuous journey, one that would see him extradited to the United States to face the music for a crime committed over 2 decades ago. In the early 80s, Rizzuto was implicated in a triple murder case. However, it wasn't until 23 years later that he would be brought to justice. The law moves slowly, but it doesn't forget, and so the once untouchable Mafia Don was shackled and shipped off to the land of stars and stripes, where he would spend several years behind bars. As Rizzuto languished in his cell, far away from his empire, trouble was brewing back home. His absence created a power vacuum, and his enemies seized the opportunity to strike. His organization, which he had so painstakingly built, was under attack. His family, once considered untouchable, was targeted. His son, Nick Rizzuto Jr., was murdered in 2009, a blow that hit Vito hard. A year later, his father, Niccolo Rizzuto Sr., was assassinated. These were dark times indeed for the Rizzuto clan. In prison, Vito could do nothing but watch helplessly as his empire was torn apart piece by piece. He was a king without a kingdom, a general without an army. He was no longer the feared mafia boss. He was just another prisoner paying his dues to society. Every day he spent behind bars was a day his empire crumbled a little more. Behind bars, Vito could only watch as his empire began to unravel. The fall of a titan had begun, and it was a fall from grace like no other. Released from prison in 2012, Vito returned to a world that had drastically changed. In the blink of an eye, his throne had been usurped, and the once powerful empire he had built was now riddled with chaos and disloyalty. The streets he once ruled were now filled with unfamiliar faces, and the respect he once commanded had faded into a whisper of the past. But if there was one thing Vito Rizzuto knew, it was power, and he was ready to reclaim it. It's said that revenge is a dish best served cold, and Vito, in true Sicilian fashion, was eager to serve his chilled plate of retribution. The streets of Montreal were soon filled with whispers of retaliatory attacks, all allegedly orchestrated by Vito. One by one, his enemies began to fall, and the power vacuum that had been left in his absence slowly started to close. Yet the world of the Mafia is nothing if not unpredictable. As Vito fought to reclaim his power, the future of his organization remained shrouded in uncertainty. Loyalties had shifted, alliances had been broken, and the once clear lines of power were now blurred. And then, in a twist of fate that could rival any Hollywood script, Vito Rizzuto, the godfather of Montreal, passed away suddenly in 2013. It was the end of an era, a close to a chapter that had been marked by power, ruthlessness, and the unyielding law of the Mafia. His death left a void that could never truly be filled, and the future of his organization remained as uncertain as ever. Vito's life was a complex tapestry woven with threads of power, loyalty, and retribution. He was a man who walked the tightrope between respect and fear, a man who built an empire from the ground up, only to watch it crumble and fight to rebuild it once more. Vito Rizzuto's life was a testament to the ruthless yet intriguing world of the Mafia. Vito Rizzuto's reign may have ended, but his impact on the Mafia world remains. Over the course of his life, Rizzuto rose from the obscurity of immigrant roots to the helm of an empire, commanding respect from allies and fear from foes. His reign was a turbulent one, marked by power struggles, betrayals, and a relentless pursuit of supremacy. Rizzuto's fall from grace was as dramatic as his ascent, a descent into the abyss of legal battles and personal losses. Yet, even in the face of adversity, he displayed an indomitable spirit, attempting to reclaim his lost empire, a testament to his tireless resolve. His influence on the Mafia world was profound and far-reaching. His death left a void, a power vacuum that led to a seismic shift in the underworld. In the annals of crime history, Vito Rizzuto stands as a captivating figure, a man who ruled an empire, lived by his rules, and left a legacy that continues to echo in the underworld.